Welcome back to another episode of Cantina Chronicles. We're here soaking in the rays on a Delphi station, Chadrian rum flowing. We're gathered again to talk the stars, the wars in the stars far, far away. This week we're talking about what's next in Star Wars live action shows and movies, the slate, what's ahead, and the kind of unexpected announcements we got this week.
I know, big news today. Big news this week.
Yeah, can I derail us immediately?
Sure.
So Rogue One ends with the Tantive 4 blasting off into hyperspace. Am I correct?
Spoiler alert, but yes.
Yeah, correct.
So I'm sure there is something in the media that I'm forgetting here, but I was just thinking about this because I don't know why I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw that last moment. How did the Imperials know they were by Tatooine, since you can't track things through hyperspace?
Well, we have to assume they did somehow. Or I don't even...
Okay.
Yeah, I guess they did hit hyperspace, but yeah, they tracked them down. So they're on the run, and there's some way that, somehow...
Well, they scrubbed their chain
Death
code,
Star,
and then it was
Star
entered into their Navicomputer tracking data, and they were able to find them after the jump.
All right. Okay. I don't want to do a whole thing like, I don't want to invoke The Last Jedi, but that's the entire plot of that film. So just saying. Just saying.
Yeah. Okay. There's also like he really underlines that Tatooine is sort of an outer rim world that you can go to sort of escape the action.
Maybe just guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thankful. Or I don't know. Maybe you could have that Vader had his little force sense because he was tracking, unbeknownst to himself, his daughter, right? So he just had a feeling that's where the rebels were. Who knows?
Sure.
Just saying. Just watching it, I'm like, there's a seamless, because you always talk about like the seamlessness between that and Episode 4, and I'm like, well, there is something missing between those two movies.
The threads.
So, well, the thing is, we need another movie. The Flight of the Tantive 4.
Where did that come from, Adam? Just randomly? Just
randomly popped in my brain. I was just like, wait a minute. This is what I do. Probably taking a shower. Usually random thoughts pop.
I'm going to have to rewatch Rogue One to see if there's actually a canon reason that was explained why they would, that's it. I mean, yeah, who knows?
That is all. Right. We can go back to the
news. Now back to the news. The first thing, obviously, that hit like a ton of bricks is that there is going to be a movie that goes into production immediately called The Mandalorian and Grogu. And what were you guys' first thoughts when you heard that?
I mean, I think we heard we heard announcements about this a while back.
Rumors.
I think maybe Kathleen Kennedy or someone at Lucasfilm, or maybe it was just rumors. I thought someone high up had said something about the show ultimately sort of like ending with a film, sort of culminating in one feature-length film at the end. So I thought we had heard that.
Yeah,
before.
I mean, the weird thing is, and everything was supposed to be Filoni's film, which is still on the slate.
Yeah,
like Filoni's film. That's there.
Where the interesting thing is that Filoni's film is not this. This is essentially Favreau's film. It's Favreau's and Filoni's. I'm sure going to help him out with it as he's helped him with everything, co-writing with everything. But this is Favreau's film, which is a random one that popped up. The accompanying news that sort of piqued my interest was that season 4 was fully written before they decided to pivot to go to a feature film.
Yeah.
And there's some thoughts that the film might be different. We might get the film and then season 4.
Like a standalone kind of between. So I mean, what's really interesting is I have so many like thoughts about why this could have happened. I think we are seeing, not to get like too behind the scenes, we're seeing the limits of streaming services and running up on the dollars of streaming services, and the financial pyramid is starting to collapse amongst a lot of them, to the point where we're just gonna have cable again in 5 years.
Yeah, there became too many.
Well, they're still borrowing, and they're still pushing forward in their initiatives to sort of build their libraries, but. Yeah, it's not paying off. The contracts are done differently now, and it's just getting worse and worse. And it's
And the math I always have in my head is, Are you going to gain more subscribers to Disney Plus by doing a season 4 of The Mandalorian, or are you going to lose more than it would cost in people canceling their subscription if you don't have a Mandalorian season 4? Because that's the weird math that they have to do. Probably you're not going to lose much of anyone. You're going to keep everyone, and then you get them again because they have to pay for seats at a movie theater, right? Like that's the math, which makes sense. However, the less cynical, let me just say the less, because I always feel like I'm the cynical guy who always talks about the business and dollars and cents. There is something beautiful about the fact that like the end of Mandalorian season 3 of Love is like a clean ending. Like we know the story could go on, but they're like retired. They're taking their
what if I
break,
bet right
so
now, Adam, that they'll do New Republic shows indefinitely, like NCIS or like any sort of other network putting together a sort of drama, a serialized drama? Because I feel like the New Republic, it's so fertile. You're bringing Ezra back. You have Sabine.
Yeah.
I mean, these could spin off into fantastic shows that I would just keep watching and watching. And if Andor sort of brings this new level of polish to all the projects that come out, I mean, those characters are fantastic. Every character that Filoni is sort of planting.
Really, yeah. Grant? You would be okay with NCIS New Republic? That would be fine with you.
Well, like high.
Okay, all right. As long as we're speaking the same language.
Actually, I really do want that in a lot of ways because I feel like you have a lot of time to spend just exploring, the bureaucracy of the New Republic. And they do that a lot in The Mandalorian, but it doesn't quite fit The Mandalorian. So when they launched this show and you thought it was going to be about a gritty bounty hunter, and then he, finds the child, and it turns into a sort of lone wolf and cub, traveling, gunslinger type.
Yeah, and I would argue that the name of this movie, Mandalorian and Grogu, is a play on lone wolf and cub.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Though I will say, Ben, do not expect that title to stick.
Okay.
I would say that, but this also reminds me of like, this is going to be a reference that I don't know. It's so old, not old. It's the 90s, but like, I think between season 4 and 5 of the X-Files, or 5 and 6, I haven't done my X-Files rewatch in a while. They had a standalone movie right between them, where it was it was a juggernaut of a show, and in the summer they did a movie. The movie was, again, standalone. They built a little bit off of it in the season when they came back, but it was one of those, like, you could come into that movie somewhat clean of the X-Files, right? And I think they're going to do something similar. So this idea that they could just take the script for season 4 and still do a season 4, just postpone it, right? Just do the standalone. Here's what gets them back in the action. They have this one major thing to do that's just a standalone movie. And they kind of come back to fill out the plot for season 4. They could definitely do that.
I'm a Moore guy, so I'm rooting for that. But, I mean, my first thought was kind of mixed emotions about this because I mean, allegedly Disney's losing money, but I'm looking at subscribers right now, and they're the number 3 most popular streaming service behind Netflix and Amazon, with 150 million subscribers. There's more subscribers than there is Max, which is HBO. Which they have, 50 million more. Max only has 95. So I've been reading that they've been like trying to maybe aggregate Peacock and some of these other like little ones that have sprung up. With the networks, just feel like they have to play in the space, but they've kind of diluted and ruined it for everyone.
I think that's going to happen. I think which is, by the way, the exact same way that cable happened 40 years. We're just getting cable again. It's just going to happen. But they have to, because as much as they're number 3, Amazon you can't count because Amazon is a completely different beast because it does not make its money on its shows. It makes its money on selling toilet paper.
And you get an automatic subscription this is like a drop in the bucket. If you're a Prime user. So I don't know how they count that. And then it's like 250 million for now.
And
Apple and Amazon are sort of exceptions in that they have their own ecosystems that are separate from commercial television.
Ben, the only reason the Expanse finished out is because Jeff Bezos, a single human being, loved the Expanse and wanted to save it. It made them no money. They lost a ton of money on it, but they have so much money, or he has so much money. Like he basically greenlit extra seasons of that
because he wanted
to see it. Like that's how wild Amazon is. And then you have something like you can talk about HBO Max and stuff, but like Disney, the number of original shows and the amount of money they're putting into the original shows is nothing compared to what like Max has like maybe 1 or 2 high quality shows a year that they put like 10 million, like millions of dollars into episodes. Disney is doing so many of these things. It's wild. Like they are hemorrhaging, and their year at the box office was dismal. And I'm not decrying Disney and wishing them dead, but like they had the worst, like one of the worst years in box office history. It was
right, which is kind of wild that they want to then double down on on like making more feature films. I mean, maybe they're hoping that Star Wars can drag, Disney consumers back to the theaters. I mean, remember when I went to that Ahsoka showing and I couldn't get in because it was too popular? That seemed like some sort of test, to see, well, what happens if we throw one of these things in a film, will people go? And the answer is, of course, yes. I mean, I don't want to get too in the weeds on the business side of this. The point was that like, I would be kind of bummed if I didn't get my full 8 episodes at, let's say, 35 minutes each, of worth of Mandalorian in season 4, in lieu for maybe a 2-hour, a 2-hour, 2.5 hour, maybe, feature film. I mean, my thought was that like, it could have a better budget, right? So, it would be a tighter story, which that's not the worst thing in the world, but I didn't feel like there was excess really in any of the stuff, except for maybe the side plot with that doctor last season, with the cloner.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I'd like.
Which is also one of my favorite episodes of this season.
Which is so. What do we think this movie is going to be about? Given that we do have some evidence as to what could be foreshadowed for the film in the show, in the threads we're talking about here, which is the scientist, the cloning, the cloning project as it relates to Grogu. The Shadow Council mentions of more cloning. We also have the Mandalorians, and what's interesting to me is it's called Mandalorian Grogu, but we have Thrawn returning to the galaxy. Almost all the pieces are on the board for Heir to the Empire, and Heir to the Empire is a great title given that we have the mantle of Mandalore maybe to pass on to someone, as well as maybe a prospective heir to the the Empire that was Palpatine's evil galactic empire. And so it could be a nice fun redressing of all of that, but maybe Mandalorian Grogu is just a more intimate sort of personal story about their relationship, maybe being in jeopardy again, one of them I don't know, maybe the stakes being pretty high, maybe one of them being in danger. So we'll see.
Yeah, maybe. I will say, like, the last thing that happened in Mandalorian that set the internet on fire was the end of season 2 of The Mandalorian. Yeah. Right. Meaning that, like, and that's not any dig on. I liked season 3 because my complaint about season 2 of The Mandalorian is like there's too many of those moments of just like guest stars and like shocking moments of just like to try to win it. But like the thing that won the internet was Luke Skywalker showing up to take is Luke Skywalker showing up.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is as much as it's going to be Grogu, like Mando and Grogu, there's part of me that wonders, knowing Disney's loves to do de-aging, and you have all these people, if you don't get quite a big Luke moment in this, or a Luke Mando team up at some point.
It just seems like those notes have all been played. It's like they've already solved whether Grogu wants to be a Mandalorian or a Jedi. They did the huge reveal, and that was a vehicle for the huge reveal for Luke.
Mm-hmm.
They've revealed the cloning. They've sort of Mandalorian has adopted Grogu. They've escaped the guild. They've reestablished Mandalore.
They've started their clan, right?
I mean, is it them assembling more people in their clan? I mean, I feel like maybe it's like, I think it's either pushing the story forward, and they're like, because they're allegedly going to do some freelancing for the New Republic, and that could go a lot of different ways. Actually, that could go back towards Thrawn, so you could go right back into this and push the whole Mandoverse thing forward with Ahsoka, or I mean, maybe it's the New Republic has a lot of battles to fight. They could be another offshoot. There could be another surviving Jedi that tries to seduce, Grogu to the dark side, like, or wants to train him, or maybe there's more of that call to the Jedi side of it. They could just do Mando matters and help the rebuild there.
You could do a war. You could do a War of the Bounty Hunters, like who talked about the fact that you haven't seen the big bounty hunters in this, the five that you see. Like, part of me is thinking about
that would
what
be
are they
such a fun movie. Honestly, that's to me that's almost like a
what if the story is that the cloners have put out have hired the guild, have hired all these members of the guild to sick Grogu, and it's just a 90-minute, 20-minute movie of just everyone's coming after
because
Grogu.
It's but what does the Shadow Council know? Because the Shadow Council didn't really know that Moff Gideon had that cloning project, though they suspected it.
Right.
There's Pelion. Yeah, there's a couple other warlords.
Yeah, I think Pelion and Thrawn who are being set up in the Mandoverse. Really, that's kind of what it looks like.
It could be revenge by some of the warlords for killing Moff Gideon, but it seems to me like they're in such a hiding mode that if they lose one arm, they're not going to reveal the other ones, necessarily just for petty revenge. You're right. It would be most likely that they would hire bounty hunters to kill them. Actually,
and I feel like when you talk about if you talk about the bounty hunters from the Executor, those would seem like when you talk about Forlom and IG-88. I mean, I guess you could look at what we see in the comics, but they don't seem all that focused on the rules, right? They seem like they're very much for hire. It doesn't matter about pucks and who's hiring them. They're not. They don't seem to be they're stopping on whatever it's called to talk to. Why am I forgetting everything that happened in the Mandalorian?
You mean it's just they're not, they'll just do the job for the glory, right?
Yeah. Well, and those are also people who are privately contacted by Vader, I think, or it seems like, right? Or at least they have or at least it seems like the Empire or the Remnant might have their private numbers. Right, they don't have to even go through the guild.
True.
There's a separate sort of bounty network called the Imperial Data Corps, I think, in the old source books, and it's the Empire has their own bounty, exchange, and it I wonder if there's one, on the dark side of the HoloNet or something, there's still the Imperial Data Corps is still out there.
Yeah, that'd be wild. That's a great call. That'd be kind of fun to do, but I don't know. I don't even know what Mando has to do with Thrawn, except unless he just gets tied into it, or unless Ezra's in the galaxy now. He would be an interesting person to get involved.
Yes, I think Ezra needs to meet Mando. I think there needs to be some overarching connection that tethers Mando and Grogu to the saga films in a major way. It basically is maybe Grogu's tissue is harvested, and that's what makes a Snoke possible or something. I don't know. Maybe to me, that's I hope there's something that amounts to to something in the sort of in the sort of birth of certain characters that we see in the sequels or stuff like that. Yeah, I'm hoping there's some connective tissue. Major.
I think they'll. I mean, Star Wars. I think they'll definitely do something like that. I think my prediction would be 0 Thrawn, 0 Ezra. I think they're leaving that over for Filoni to take care of. I also think there's probably a bit of a mandate coming down that's just this needs to be very standalone. We don't want people to have to feel like they need to do homework, which is to watch Boba Fett or Ahsoka. I feel like I saw the Marvels. I love the Marvels. There were and having watched all of the shows, and my wife watching all the shows, there are moments where I had to be we had to have a conversation of, oh, that's this person from this. I forgot that happened 2.5 years ago. Right. I feel like it felt a little too interconnected at times, and I think they're going to want to pull back from that a little bit.
That's a good point. Maybe this doesn't have to be connected to anything and be a sort of insulated story. Because we've also talked about the idea that maybe the Mando and Grogu story never ends. It's sort of the ultimate serialized, wandering swordsman, and it's sort of we imagine that there will be a walking off into the sunset moment, right? What better than a feature film to sort of end with that moment, and then we wait a very long time until we get Mando and Grogu stuff again, or we basically do that in ancillary mediums like comics or something else.
Personally, and I think we talked about this last week, I'm just like, I've talked about it before. I just don't want Avengers Star Wars. Like, we're calling it the Mandoverse, and every time I say that, my skin crawls a little bit.
Thank you. This is huge. This is the most important comment tonight.
Yeah. I mean, because I think all these stories need to stand apart. Otherwise, it's just going to make the galaxy seem too small. Like, there's no reason for Boba Fett to join them. There's no reason for the Mandalorian to fight Thrawn, unless he corrupted. It was really Thrawn's cloning program or something, and now there's another one. Like, there's no need to do that, and I don't want to be like, and oh my god, who is it? It's Boba Fett. He just showed up. I don't want that scene to happen. That's not going to make me happy. That's just going to make it. I don't know. No matter how well they write it,
I would be very happy. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I'd be very happy this entire movie. The only two returning characters are the Mandalorian and Grogu, meaning from like all the shows.
Yeah, and I'm really thinking more of like Filoni's movie than this one. But so I'm just like, I don't know that.
Oh, well, I have bad news for you. That's exactly what
no, everyone's just started saying that, and then it was like truth. But he's never said that's what it's going to be. There's going to be a lot of characters in this timeline, and they may have connections. But again, for a feature film, the more connections, the more convoluted it is. Though I think at a certain point, Disney just has to be like, Star Wars is for Star Wars fans, and if you're not going to watch live action things, these films aren't going to make as much sense. I mean, maybe they'll keep trying to make films be standalone, but I mean, I don't know. It's like, so then they won't show Luke, because if you show Luke, it's like they know each other, and how do they know each other? And like, I don't know. That's gonna get wild too. But I just kind of hope these all, I think Filoni's movie will be his version of Heir to the Empire, that trilogy or whatever himself. And maybe Ahsoka's on her own journey now and is like not even involved anymore. Maybe like Ezra's the one that's there, or it's sort of like, who's tracking Thrawn right now? It's the New Republic is. So now it's sort of a New Republic battle versus Thrawn. And Ezra's there too, but maybe Ezra has his own agenda. He doesn't need to like necessarily follow, but I assume he'll stick with Hera, and Zeb and Chopper and doing that. Or he'll be, now it's his turn to find Ahsoka and Sabine, and he's going to try, like, that's all he's going to be worried about. So I don't know. I just feel like the more these stories can be disparate, the richer the galaxy will be for it.
Yeah. It like you said, it doesn't feel as small, right? Like, that's part of the issue. Sometimes when you have everyone running into everyone, it feels a bit
and I think Filoni
small.
knows that.
And yeah, I think so. The other thing, so two things. One, I feel like I'm very excited to see Favreau do a feature film. I mean, Iron Man, I think, is like not to make it into the Marvel Universe, but like as like the first movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that movie is 50% of the reason why the MCU is successful. Because that movie is pretty darn good.
Without Iron Man,
really
we would not
strong.
have what we have.
Great script.
It is just it does everything bang 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 bang. It is teach it in film school in terms of like, if you want to tell like 4-quadrant storytelling, like that's the model. Also, please don't use models, because it gets boring after a while. But in terms of like, that's great. But
it's
and so I'm excited to see him do it. Like, I think he could tell a very tight single story that's very emotionally connected. The other question I have about this is, so that I think is actually making me somewhat excited, is that from all intents and purposes, it sounded like the Rey movie was kind of gearing up to go into production this year, and then possibly have a Christmas or winter 2025 release. It sounds now like this is probably going to the Mando Grogu story is probably going to be Christmas 2025, because I think like you have a Favreau who's like, we can write with the script's already written pretty much. I know how to run a big giant movie. I can get this thing on its wheels. I can get this thing running. We have all the people already committed for acting. I can get this off the ground. We can get it for 2025 and not feel rushed like other Star Wars movies. So that theoretically pushes the Rey movie back a year or possibly 2. And part of me is excited by that, right? Because I'm like, give that movie time. Like, do not rush this movie.
I think the latest dates on the Rey movie, the Charmin movie, is 26, sometimes in 2026. And I mean, I think there's no reason why they both can't be working at the same time. I don't even know if the Rey movie has a script yet.
For sure.
But yeah. And so, I mean, that could be summer 26, that could be Christmas 26, but it does feel like they could get this Mando Grogu movie up by, Christmas 25, and then we have Christmas 26, and then we have Christmas 27, and then they could get back on the horse where we get, I mean, because they were talking about 1-2 feature films a year, not too long ago, like trying to do that.
Yeah, I think that's going. I mean, next year, don't forget, this year, I should say, this year, there is exactly one MCU movie coming out this entire year. I think they're pulling back a lot on these giant franchises, which is I'm fine with. I'm like one Star Wars movie a year, put it in Christmas.
That's great. Yeah,
sold. Like that's all I ever wanted. And the rumor I've heard from a couple of sources who are like some of the people that floated the idea or talked about the idea that this was going to be a movie, like some pretty good sources that seem to have like the early running, is that like the Rey script is not written at all. And that's because the guy who's writing it, and I can't think of his name.
A male writer?
No, the guy who's writing is the guy who does Peaky Blinders.
Right.
And he's currently writing and like just about to really start production on the final season of Peaky Blinders. So there's a lot of stuff going on where his loyalties are somewhat divided. Loyalties, that sounds rough. But, like he's commitments. He's got multiple commitments going on, and so it sounds like, which is like that's his baby. Like that show has been on forever. So I think he's trying to land that, and so it sounds like that also might be a bit what's going on. Is like we need something, but part of me hopes too is like it's been 2019, right? So we're looking at a 5-year gap in Star Wars movies, and that sounds like a short period of time. But we're talking about how accelerated it is now. It feels long, and nostalgia, this weird drug, this weird poison that is now accelerated, might be enough to actually make a Star Wars movie very successful, because it's not like people feel like it's been forever since a Star Wars movie has been in the theaters. Right?
I have to say, sorry, go for it.
Yeah. No, that was just. I do wonder what the setback is as to why we're not maybe just jumping to a new era and doing an all new story, altogether that sort of feels like the original trilogy, sort of in media res, where we get dropped into sort of this lived in galaxy with these giant factions, at war, and we sort of, explore a wonderful sort of space opera therein, and sort of like just its own sort of like, part of the story. It doesn't have to be connected to anything else. I just wonder why that's not sort of an initiative, like the Golden Age of the Sith, or like the Sith Wars, or like maybe just really diving into the Sith as the enemy. Like I just wonder why that's not really on the table. I feel like maybe Mangold is doing that, but I don't know what that Dawn of the Jedi film is.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it's weird that it's actually like the first thing. I mean, it will be a lived-in universe, and it will be telling its own sort of, I mean, really drastically unique lore.
Yeah. Because I do worry about a sort of episodic TV series, like a premium streaming series, turning into a feature-length film. I do worry about that slightly. I know it may still do something where we just sort of like, tilt from a sea of stars, of pinpricks of light, down to like a planet, really, and just start with dramatic music. I wonder if it just sort of follows that formula of the saga films and the sort of major feature films, or if it sort of just does its own thing. I'm just confused maybe about like the stylistic approach to doing a Star Wars film, after sort of like a Western sort of gunslinger series. Like is it going to start as a Western essentially, or is it going to start as a Star Wars film? It just, that's sort of my question at this point.
I think
a serialized Western sort of pulp show, or is it going to start as a sort of saga film, or even Rogue One and Solo, attempted to sort of mimic, the vast, space after the title crawls and things like that. Except for, Solo, obviously.
Solo starts
the sparks. But I would argue that the black with the sort of sparks is a sort of
it made you feel like you were
space.
Yeah. I love that opening for that reason. And remember, it did that weird thing too of like, didn't do a crawl, right? But it did that like that blue text. So I'm like,
and I think they announced there will be crawls on every movie heretofore. Yeah.
They did? Oh, man.
I think Kathleen Kennedy announced that.
Well, that would solve a lot of the bickering we're doing about sort of like,
I guess that's true.
bringing in the non-Star Wars fan or the generals a fan.
Boy, that feels like 1990s video games to me. But all right, remember all the video games Star Wars? Yeah.
I don't think Mando and Grogu needs that.
Well, that's the thing. I'm just not as excited about a Mando and Grogu thing, because for me as a fan, it's like, well, this is a series I've seen a million times. So if they're going to do this, they've got to do something to make it special, and production value, I think, will go a long way. I mean, if they can actually use more set building and make it feel more realistic, I think that would help. If they actually have a budget on this thing.
Well, don't we think Thrawn is going to appear in this film? Because I feel like
that's what we were saying.
Now that he's gone back to the known galaxy, he's probably in Mando's sort of
sector, like
sector.
Yeah, I mean that's the way they could go for sure. I mean, we know Mando is again New Republic adjacent. And if this is what they're worried about,
and that's a great way to start the flick too. If the flick starts with sort of an ominous, tilt to the Chimera, I'm in.
Honestly, I think they should hire. I think Favreau should hire Zahn to write it if it's going to do that. I can't get enough Zahn stuff.
Or just Zahn on set and just
have for the space battles.
We can do here in terms of Thrawn's tactics, the cloak and dagger sort of stuff.
That's what I want to see in the
the only way I can see a sort of like remnant Empire versus the New Republic is if it's sort of cloak and dagger, right? It's sort of like these hit and fade maneuvers from Thrawn. It's what I'm hoping for, at least, and it's because you almost want to see them being damaged and looking ineffectual, and then maybe also there's a lot of stagnation in the Senate and, stalemates and things like that. And it's just bureaucracy's just, bloated and, as we've seen in the show so far. And it's sort of like just all the failings of the New Republic are being used as advantages for Thrawn and sort of like Thrawn's resurgence in the galaxy. That's sort of what I'm thinking.
And maybe we're jumping ahead of it a little bit, and that's really what the Filoni movie is going to be. But I mean, I want that naval warfare thing. I mean, I've read 9 Zahn books now, and each one of them's amazing because of the naval tactics. But you can there's only so much you can visualize in your mind. I really want to just see the thing happen. I want to
just paint a picture, not a word picture, an actual picture.
That stuff is feels like naval battles, but. I think you really want the Thrawn sort of the tactician's point of view when it comes to that stuff. Yeah.
So I'm weirdly higher on this than I think Ben. I'm actually quite excited by this because I like this, but my thing about that's been wearing a bit thin on me with The Mandalorian is the use of the volume, where I'm starting to see the seams a lot, and I think the thing's amazing and it's wonderful, but it feels. I'm starting to see the difference between a TV show and a movie where I didn't at first, right? And so I'm really excited to see Favreau take this thing up. And I think because he has so much experience on the big screen, he's going to understand how to elevate this thing, right, to a feature film and make it I kind of want to stand alone, whatever. Related to that is part of me is wondering if you mentioned him earlier, but Pelion might be the mid-tier big bad we get in this film and
the
not
buffer layer.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, the buffer layer, that actor is I can't think of his name, but he's in everything. He's a good boss. He can hold.
Crushed the scenes.
It's not some random guy. Yep.
Right. I mean, I would love to see. So Hera knows where Thrawn is. Maybe there's some sort of small program, or maybe someone needs to go to Dathomir, or they need a bounty hunter. She tells Carson Teva. Carson Teva either delegates the job to Mando or brings him to Hera. I mean, that's definitely an easy way to get Mando into this, and so he could do sort of a smaller battle, and then maybe there's another larger one that's Pelion versus Hera, something like that. Definitely could see that going on. It just seems a bit early for this to happen, but I mean, it seems kind of like a foregone conclusion that season 4 is just going to be concatenated into this feature film.
Yeah, possibly.
That's the fastest way to do it.
I think, yeah. And the weird thing is that the question I have, and then maybe this brings us into our second topic, which is along with this announcement, is that season 2 of Ahsoka is officially happening. They officially announced it. There's artwork. It's actually going on, which I'm very excited about because I really liked Ahsoka, and then I realized, this is part 1. I didn't know how much it was going to be a cliffhanger of a season, so it kind of threw me a little bit. But I'm very excited to see how it concludes. And my question, a couple of questions for you, but like Thrawn, do we expect to see Thrawn in season 2 of Ahsoka, or do you think we're just going to be? Do you think we're going to be like going back and forth between what's going on in Star Wars Galaxy versus the other galaxy? Do you think they get back? The last question I have, I just want to throw all these at you because I want you to discuss them however you want. Is that we know this is going into production. We know TV production is faster than movie production. So is there a chance we actually get season 2 of Ahsoka before we get this movie? In which case, that might throw this entire math off.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the unknown unknown. Or those are the known unknowns.
The known unknowns?
I mean, we just don't know. I think I would prefer it if they were separate. And this is just, Ahsoka and Sabine and Baylan and Shinhati and whoever else they meet on that planet. I think that would be kind of fun. It would be slower and it wouldn't be jumping back and forth. But I mean, that's one of the mainstays of Star Wars is sort of concurrent storylines. And I do think Ezra is going to want to save them like he was saved. So.
And that makes me sad is like,
it's a little redundant though. But I agree with you, Ben. I do think that Baylan Skull is probably your main villain of season 2. It's obviously the Ray Stevenson's passing away is complicates that.
Yeah, it really does.
We're all sort of worried about what the steps are that are going to be taken. But I wonder how that character is going to proceed. It's a big mystery. But we do just, again, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson, incredible actor.
What makes it so hard is that he did such an amazing job. Do you know what I mean? Like he within that series, he made that character his own. And that's what makes it so hard. If it was just like a whatever performance,
Star Wars character I've seen on screen in a very long time.
And so that's the issue. Is like if it was just a whatever performance, you'd be like, oh, we can recast, no problem. But like, eesh.
It was like since you're Mace Windu and your Qui-Gon Jinns and so Gregor, like this was another standout sort of like a Jedi character, jaded Jedi character, fallen Jedi, if you will.
You can't just put a guy in robes and give him a lightsaber and have him like be charismatic. Like what Baylan Skull was like he's an icon now. It's just amazing. So
and I was looking for, and again, we'll talk about the hero's journey. I think at some point this evening, but I just that fight with the shadow, right? Like Ahsoka's shadow, right? Another Jedi who's sort of fallen off the path, but just representing sort of the opposite side of the spectrum, and I really was wanting to see another big fight between them, and I'm hoping season 2 delivers in that regard in some way. He is almost the brother, you know what I mean? Like that's just what he was almost building to in a lot of ways. Obviously the Mortis, gods, and sort of like the art that we do get is like this just really awesome sort of simple, sketch from Filoni on like a notepad of just like Ahsoka and Sabine standing on the Argonath, or like the finger of
the father,
of Isildur from Lord of the Rings. The father, I mean, sorry. And it's a really cool sort of framing of that they're there now. That's where Baylan was standing. Obviously, they're following him. It looks like a pursuit is happening. I wonder what they're going to find, right? I think Filoni has told a compelling story so far, because we know Baylan's going to seek the ultimate boon, right? Or something that seems to be this ultimate power. So they're right on, hot on his footsteps.
That's good. If they didn't end Ahsoka, if they didn't do a second season or a feature or something, it would have been a travesty, because it's quite a cliffhanger that they left us on there. So definitely hoping that happens.
Right, because you see something in the distance, right? There's like I think we discussed it for like 45 minutes. It was, and it was just like a red light. It was like just grain in the film.
Exactly. A little sliver of light.
Sorry, smudge on the lens. Yeah.
Ponderous discussion about looks like a random red light in the distance.
Yeah, right on, man. Right on. I wanted, we started getting to a conversation about offline about Ahsoka and sort of what is her heroes? Like, who is Ahsoka? You know, she's such an interesting character. She's been through so much, but it's like, what is her hero's journey? You know, and where is she in that journey? It's so long, you know, by Star Wars standards. So,
to me, she's like the representative sort of outlier or outsider character.
Yeah.
These sort of character that's outside the, I guess, the status quo and this sort of like normative factions and sort of demographics of the galaxy and belief systems. I think she follows her own path, and I think her path is just built upon by her mentors, you know, Yoda, Anakin, you know, the Jedi Order, and sort of, I think the good parts of the Jedi.
Yep.
She took that and left,
Yeah.
you know, the bureaucracy. And again, I just think the Jedi were just swamped in, you know, political dealings, given they're at war and stuff like that. So they're real bad time for the Jedi for a while. There.
Yeah. Do you want a very like Campbellian answer to your question?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to put it in buckets. So I'm very curious to hear your Campbellian answer. So this is obviously Joseph Campbell wrote Hero of a Thousand Faces, created the hero's journey. That's for Grogu.
Yes. One thing, there you go. And one thing I want to mention to everyone too is that when you look at the hero's journey, it is cyclical, with arrows pointing that it can't happen multiple times to a single person. That person can go on multiple hero's journeys. So we're not, if he's not taking advantage of that storytelling approach. But I would say that between where we meet her at the end, where we see her at the end of this, she has just gone through apotheosis and is seeking the ultimate boon. And that's going to be season 2 is the ultimate boon.
Okay.
Is the first part of it is the ultimate boon, looking at the Mortis arc, and then because here's the thing, coming that with the return is refusal of the return, where they can't get home, the magic flight where they try to escape, and then rescue from without. So there you have Ezra returning,
or
to
the
then
Purgles,
pay back to bring her Purgles or something, right? And so like I feel like that's where we are. I feel like that's the. I think
we've seen the Purgles provide sort of hyperspace transit already, and so therefore getting back may take a different route.
Yeah,
that's personally my bet.
Do something different.
I'm thinking World Between Worlds is going to be utilized again, and then it might turn into a Doctor Who at that point, where we're just popping into different
timelines. Yeah, the World Between Worlds. I forgot about that. Just so I'm just going to read the thing. So I actually found the Campbellian one here. So it's call to adventure, refusal of the call, and this is exactly what George Lucas used to write the original Star Wars Episode 4, New Hope. Like that, he just like followed it line by line, and it's been the.
And spent time with Campbell and gained many wonderful learnings. From
my nerd dad actually read Campbell before he saw Star Wars, and as soon as he was watching it, he was like, "He read Campbell." So and that's how I grew up, and I, with Campbell in my household. So, so the hero's journey, and this is a cross referencing of pretty much every myth in like Earth, like world, and sort of what they all have in common. So there's a call to adventure, refusal of the call, supernatural aid, crossing the threshold, belly of the whale, road of trials, the meeting with the god. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to take the gender out of these. Temptation, atonement, apotheosis, the ultimate boon, the refusal of the return, the magic flight, the rescue from without, crossing of the return threshold, master of two worlds, and then freedom to live. So, I mean, I was curious to like even try to actually put her in these boxes, and I went back in the beginning, and so Call to Adventure, I had pretty much when she was given to Anakin as his Padawan, forced on Anakin, and then the refusal of the call kind of came maybe from her, maybe from him. It actually happened in that first movie, I think, that when when she meets him, that's a little fungible, right? Supernatural aid, mentor. I mean, that's Anakin. He is supernatural. He's the chosen one, so it's kind of inherent. And then kind of crossing the threshold, belly of the whale, road of trials, I think are all the Clone Wars. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of, she goes through a bunch of things. It's all that. Then the meeting with the god, I would say that's her Mortis moment, right? When she's on Mortis. I think temptation is sort of where she's been for the past, like through the original trilogy, which is just like she's wrestling with Anakin falling to the dark side and becoming Vader. That's sort of I think that's her sort of temptation. And we got that sort of at the beginning of Ahsoka, the series. And then I think atonement is the finale of the series, because that's sort of, it's usually atonement with the father, but it's like, I think that Force vision, her reconciliation with Anakin in the Beyond.
Which is her father.
Yeah, I mean, he essentially is a father. Yeah, more than anything, really.
Yeah.
And so I don't think we've seen apotheosis yet. That's my...
Fair enough.
That's my...
vision. I would actually agree with that. I think you're right. Here, let me do this. So this is why I think we're wheels within wheels within wheels.
Okay.
You go ahead.
I think you can map this entire thing on just Ahsoka season 1.
Okay. Yeah, you probably could. Yeah.
Yeah. Call of Adventure is when she's was in the temple, looking and seeing all the things, seeing the Mortis stuff. Refuses the call, doesn't want to go, doesn't want to go see Sabine, right?
Yeah.
Don't want to go see Sabine, don't want to do it. Supernatural aid, world between worlds. She meets Anakin, she does that. Crossing the first threshold, she's on her way.
Right.
Belly of the whale. Belly of the whale.
Belly of a whale.
Hold on. She's literally in the belly of a whale, a space whale. The Royal Trials is getting there, getting through, I don't know, all the minefields, getting to that. The meeting with the goddess is just her meeting in there, and then you and I kind of meet up.
The Great Mothers sort of.
Yeah, and you and I meet up there at the end. But but I don't think you're wrong, Ben. I think you're absolutely right. I think this is just this idea of just you can map it on because you have a character who's been told in so many stories. I think you have the overarching hero's journey of Ahsoka, and you have multiple hero's journeys with Ahsoka. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also agree with that. I think that we've already seen a hero's journey with Ahsoka. We've seen it again now with season 1. I have to think though Ahsoka is moving towards becoming a sort of supernatural aid figure and sort of getting locked in that category, because I feel like Dave Filoni sort of related her to Gandalf in a lot of the sort of sketches and drawings he's done post Rebels. And what's fun about Gandalf is he's a character that sort of works as a warden for the era or the timeline or the times that are ahead. And I do wonder if Ahsoka may be one of the first sort of heroic characters on the light side to sense maybe the Emperor's, return or continuance or contingency. Like, I do wonder if, much like Gandalf, she is this ultimate mystic, supernatural aid character, and sort of does discover the first incarnation of the sort of the Emperor's return in your Snokes or your whatever.
I could see that really working and being quite literal if she's actually doing a ton behind the scenes. We don't know what happened to Lando and Chewbacca when they went to go gather the cavalry, but that cavalry scene in Rise of Skywalker is essentially look to the east upon the sunrise, and we'll be there, right? So So what if So she could be kind of tracking all of this and like secretly binding forces together.
Well, this is still a theory. We don't know where Ahsoka's story ends,
right?
But that's just my own theory. Is that of the hero's journey and of the parts of the cycle, I feel like that is definitely the one that I hone in on.
Yeah, and I agree wholly with both of you. Adam, I do think every series they give them a distinct series journey, and I'm sure we could layer it over Boba Fett. I'm sure we could layer it over Obi-Wan, and all of them. But I do.
It's essential for a pillar. It's a pillar, essentially.
Yeah, it is. It's our first pillar. It's our first pillar.
Definitely a pillar.
But and Grant, yes, I absolutely. We talked all season about how the Gandalf crossovers and how this is where she's heading. But it's curious that we both sort of stopped on the same spot. And I'm really most curious about her full arc because I want to know, who is she? And I think sort of knowing her full journey is what, is what's going to make her an exciting character. And so, I mean, either way you look at it, she's both kind of facing this next sort of phase of apotheosis. So it's just going to be curious. I think maybe that's it. Something that's going to happen with this Mortis temple. And then she'll become this Gandalf character and then do all these things.
I do think I would argue that we're at atonement right now.
Okay.
Just given that I think the confrontation that's set up with Balin's skull is, I think, representative of the sort of the conflicted heart of the Jedi, right? And sort of like, here's someone who's jaded, from the Jedi Order because, they were driven to war and they sort of lost their way. And then here's someone who was, wrongly accused by a kind of a Jedi Order lost in bureaucracy and the politics of a wartime republic. Like, to me, it's like that's sort of fascinating, and that's what I hope is the heart of that season two.
Yeah.
And sort of atonement with confronting the brother, or maybe atonement in Campbell's word, just confronting the father or whatever
but
Grant, written about there in certain myths. But
yeah, I think you're onto something too, because if she's able to confront and turn Balin in some way, I'm not saying he's gonna survive, but in terms of like he'll see the light in the end,
right?
Doesn't that give her the atonement from the opportunity she missed with Anakin to be like, I did save someone, I did save someone, exactly. And that's the atonement right there. I just want to say Travis is back with us again this week. He just reminded us that we were talking about that, Dave Filoni spoke specifically to Ahsoka's voice in Rise of Skywalker and said, just because you hear her doesn't mean she's dead. Yeah. Right. So even Filoni has confirmed that Ahsoka's could possibly still be alive.
Yeah. All right. I'm willing to amend that, because you could definitely see that, like, temptation could be Anakin's Force vision, right? Like, yeah, I do think there was a certain level
which
of,
it is,
of processing that happened after that, but Anakin's still out there. So, maybe there is more to go on that.
And Campbell is the first to admit that every monomyth doesn't map perfectly on his archetype, right? Like certain things move a little bit here and there. It happened a little bit before, or can bleed with each other, right? It's as we talk about in the social sciences, it was known as an ideal type. Like there's an ideal type that you can talk about that things don't, which is what we think of as perfect, but most things aren't perfect. They come
and
close
then everyone's
and talking about supernatural aid, it pretty much pops up in Star Wars in random intervals when it's sort of like explicit that maybe the Force is sort of at work in this moment.
Yeah, that's true. It could take a lot of forms in Star Wars with the Force doing that. Yeah, you could affect a non-Force wielder. Interesting stuff. Yeah, because I'm interested to see what role Anakin's going to play in season 2. I assume it'll be significant.
Yeah. Do you think the next sort of news we get is that Hayden Christensen confirmed, at some point?
Yeah, I think so. I think he is the father.
I think
he will have become or is going to become the father.
I also wonder if you can recast. I also wonder if you can keep Balin's skull in the story. And I don't know. Maybe it's not a recast. Maybe it's some sort of something with footage from Rey. That would be great if possible. But something where it's like she's fighting Balin, but it's Anakin or something. You know what I mean? Like. And it's sort of the Force has changed the visage of the character. I could see something like that happen and working perfectly, honestly. But like, there's ways to bring Hayden back into the show.
So he demonstrated his acumen. He is beloved now. Yeah. Like he has passed through everything. He's gone on his hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
And his
master of 2 worlds,
trials,
freedom to live,
and is accepted. Yeah, exactly. And
crossing the return threshold.
You can't ever match Balin's skull. And so what if you pivot to make another really smart fan decision and just say, like, he walks into the father, like Balin walks into the father, and who walks out but a visage of Anakin, like something about this, and then you just have Anakin back in this world between worlds, something, you know what I mean? Like you just go full Anakin.
It's crazy talk.
Because what else are you gonna do?
Well, yeah.
But what else are you gonna do? Like, I really don't. I don't think they're
Get
gonna recast Balin. I really don't think they're gonna recast Balin.
Because Ray Stevenson's so good. If Ray Stevenson wasn't just iconic,
I just don't see how you do it.
This would be. The recasting would make sense, but his performance is otherworldly, iconic, one of the greatest characters.
He's playing with fire, doing it. I think they're going to rewrite.
I was thinking of he could leave like a trail of breadcrumbs to the thing, or maybe like a trail of traps to try and stop them. And there's like recordings or something of him, and then she gets there and he's dead.
I'm thinking they might just.
Yeah, you could do that. Yep, you could totally do that.
And he doesn't quit.
I do wonder if they'll just Indiana Jones it, where it's like, it's like, it's like the Last Crusade. It's like, oh, he just fell in the abyss. That's like in this area that seems to be this sort of like the final ruins or sacred shrine of the Mortis gods or something. You know what I mean? Like it's something to that effect, because I just feel like I don't know how recasting would even work, honestly. I just don't know.
You just get a big white guy and give him a beard and a haircut and tell him to act like Ray Stevenson. I mean, I don't know. Everyone's fan casted Liev Schreiber.
Liev Schreiber, I know.
Liev Schreiber's the big one.
Or Russell Crowe as an ultimate
Russell Crowe
tribute to Ray's acting acumen,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, Russell Crowe would definitely be good as well. Yeah. I think it depends. I bet Ray Stevenson had a plan, and he either said you can't do it or you can. And I'm sure that they will Lucasfilm will honor whatever he said, and they'll make it work.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure, I feel like Ray Stevenson is just like he was a journeyman actor. I'm sure he would have been aware of whatever was signed on. But I think just with how beloved he is amongst the community, it's just so hard to recast. I mean,
so Travis said,
go ahead. What's Travis saying?
I think it's easier. I mean, he just said, like, just have him be possessed by the sun and have them played by Sam Witwer. Like, you could just do a Sam Witwer. Like, hey, you got Sam Witwer.
Idea.
Yeah, I love
Travis
it. Yeah,
right.
Great.
Or it's my favorite idea. Or just have him replaced with another Punisher. Like Dolph Lundgren, Tom Jane, or John Bernthal.
I am hoping.
Why have we had 4 people play the Punisher? That's wild. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying Sam Witwer would just be great as the brother.
Yeah.
Brother who appeared.
We've already seen Sam Witwer in live action. Do you guys remember?
No, what am I forgetting?
Wait, we'll take I mean, he voices Darth Maul in Solo, right?
Yeah. But we've actually seen.
Oh, you know what? I'm mistaking him with a different voice actor.
Are you thinking about Matt Lantern?
That's who I was thinking of. Sorry,
Lantern. I always call him Lantern. I always add more to his name, but Matt Lantern. Yeah, he was.
Sam Witwer was. They used him in Force Unleashed too, right? Yeah, he's the Force Unleashed guy.
I mean, and he's like a legit, like, actual. I'm not saying that Matt Lantern isn't, but like Sam Witwer's also, he does it mostly now a lot of voice work because he's really good at it. Yeah, but he's a legit actor. But he's been in a lot a
Oh yeah, no, I remember him.
He was in Battlestar. He was in Battlestar Galactica. He was in Being Human. A lot of other things.
Yeah, no, he would be amazing. Though it would.
Like, it'd be fun to do some fun shadow play where it looks like the broad shoulders of Baylan Skoll. The figure walks out. It's Sam Witwer as the brother. Like the silhouette sort of shifts.
He's allegedly they're allegedly all dead, super right? Mystic. So all the Mortis gods, but I mean maybe they don't really die since they're gods. Question mark?
Yeah, you're talking about gods and
something
things. Maybe they're dead in our galaxy, but not this one. Who knows, right? Like,
it's fascinating that all the Purgles, the Star Whales, go here to die, like to Peridia to die. There's all these castles from the Great Mothers and the Night Sisters of Dathomir. Like, it's fascinating, and also that magic, the sort of Dathomir magic. It like raises the dead. It's like necromancy essentially. Like, does that tie into the location we're going to? Like,
there's a lot of death surrounding
this
planet.
Why weren't there more structure made from Purgle bones down there? Like, shouldn't there be a bunch of like Purgle bone structures down there that like either fell from?
You mean like the hermit crab people should have? Like,
I want to see Castle Grayskull built out of Purgle bones.
That place was missing a castle. That was like the only thing that planet was missing.
That is right. I mean, we've only explored a very small part.
Yeah, we did have a dark tower.
And
that was a castle. But
right. Give me
which is not lost on me either.
You don't like a gaunt witch just like howling like the statues.
I love those.
Like,
no, I love everything about the planet, but I was just thinking, I'm like, like they have a lot of like sustainable materials up there. I'm surprised they aren't being used.
The other thing is like, don't count out what's her name.
Oh no, Shinhati.
No, not even Shinhati. Why can't they think of her name?
Oh no, the witch.
Mother?
The witch who stayed behind, who died.
Morgan
right?
Elsbeth.
Because like Morgan Elsbeth, thank you. Because we again are on a planet where a lot of things seem to come back to life, right?
Yeah.
Like so don't count her out
right.
either.
And that blade itself, the blade of Talzin could resurrect her. Who knows, right?
It's weird to introduce that whole thing and then have her die 15 minutes later. Just
yeah,
saying.
no, I think that would be awesome if she came back. So here, what we're saying is there's plenty to work with here if we want to just stay on. Peridia.
Which I'm excited about. Like, explore it a little more. Like, I love me a new planet. It is a different planet than a lot we've seen. We haven't seen that a ton in the Star Wars universe. So like, do it. Give us some more. Yeah, give us our castle, our Purgle bone.
Yeah, sorry, that was a weird ask. It was a weird ask.
No, I love it. Don't apologize. I am on board, 100%.
All right. Yeah. Well, so this is all fantastic. Oh man, I'm gonna just if you have keep thinking about Ahsoka, but I'm gonna give us a little aside to think about right now. There was another random story that popped out. Benioff and Weiss were interviewed, like out of the darkness, like. I haven't seen anything about them
popped up this
in years, and then all of a sudden, boom!
Nothing.
They did like I think it was a Hollywood Reporter or a.
It's for their 3-body problem. Their new, I think, series coming out. It looks.
They're doing the 3-body problem.
Yes.
Like they're like boy, how are they going to butcher that? Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Just the ending.
Yeah,
it'll start strong.
Yeah, it'll be great. The first 2/3 will be wonderful.
You guys, it's some low hanging fruit there, but okay.
I know. Yeah. I feel bad saying it for that reason.
No, I really respect Benioff and Weiss. I think they're brilliant storytellers.
I kid because
Benioff's books.
But we got a little Star Wars news along with it. Whatever you think, and they revealed they had a script for The First Jedi. It was called, and they wanted their movie called The First Jedi, and they were actually upset with Ryan for taking The Last Jedi. They were like, "Oh, our whole idea is ruined."
Oh, is that the order?
Yeah,
work?
he's
That's
like,
really funny.
and we were annoyed as hell when Ryan Johnson, the duo's longtime friend and 3-body problem producer, called his movie The Last Jedi. Weiss said dryly, "He completely destroyed the obvious title for what we were working on." Asked what went wrong, Benioff said, "Lucasfilm ended up not wanting to do a First Jedi story. We had a very specific story idea in mind, and ultimately they decided they didn't want to do that. And we totally get it. It's their company and their IP, but we weren't the droids they were looking for."
It is a quick paradigm shift to go from The Last Jedi to The First Jedi.
Yeah, but it makes sense too. And
that
was the movie we all wanted them to make, right? Like we wanted Ancient Jedi. I mean, maybe not exactly The First Jedi, but we were thinking Jedi Sith Wars or, High Republic.
But isn't it weird we kind of might be getting that
Well, so that's
now?
that's the fun part.
Right? Because like that, isn't that kick in the teeth to them just to be like, oh, but like Mangold. And I wonder if like Mangold probably came in and pitched completely different, but like very much a similar idea of like this is the origins of the Force. And they're like, oh yeah. Remember Benioff Weiss said, we didn't like theirs.
We like
yours. Yeah, we'll take yours.
It's pitched as a biblical epic, almost like a religious text, inventing the Jedi, laying out the tenets of the Jedi, the first lightsaber, all that sort of stuff. And then I think Kathleen Kennedy said that the Dawn of the Jedi and the New Jedi Order films would be linked in that regard, with those themes, and basically what's set up with the Jedi in that Dawn of the Jedi film might play into what Rey sort of establishes as that new temple in her story, which she's procured all the texts. So I imagine that those texts are extremely
they
ancient.
could interact in really fun ways. It's because they're kind of both trying to interpret the same thing, and they interpret them in different ways, and like maybe one turns out badly and the other one turns out good, and vice versa. Or it's like there's a lot of good shenanigans.
Well, what's cool about those texts too, I think if you have the visual dictionaries by Pablo Hidalgo, he sort of he sort of gives little explainers for what those texts are and what they allude to and what they contain and the information that's in those. And I feel like there's some really cool sort of like cosmic creation tales, going back to Campbell and stuff like that. They're very Campbellian in that, like, it really gets into the sort of the creation myths of the galaxy, the Force, all that stuff. I do wonder if this might, start in a very mystical way in sort of like the origins of not just the Jedi but the Force, right? Like I do wonder if Mangold might sort of zoom out and really just start with the Force and then get to the Jedi, or sort of maybe it's more about sort of life forms and their Force sensitivity. I don't know, but there's really cool stories.
I mean, that's what's implied.
And God, like cosmic deities and titans and things like that are alluded to.
That's what's implied. Like the creation of the Force, and when you really start to think about that, it's like, so there's humans and there's this galaxy presumably, and then all of a sudden people can use the Force, and it's like, I assume they're not going to tell you why, but they have to tell you something. There needs to be a happening. Or maybe, it's always been there and the first person discovered it, like, right. I don't know. That's going to be fascinating. It's going to be really fun. I'm sorry to Benioff and Weiss that they're not going to be able to tell that story.
Will not be telling that story.
But I am grateful that Mangold will be.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad someone's selling it for sure. I would have been, I a couple shots, but I would have been more than happy to see their take on it. And what's interesting is, I mean, you got to assume they would have taken more of a Game of Thronesy approach to it a little bit, but Mangold is the one that I'm really fascinated by, because I like Mangold as a director. I think Logan's amazing. He can dabble in genre. I mean, we don't have to retell it over here, but I'm actually a very, very big fan of the last Indiana Jones movie. But he has a style. All of those films share a style that does not sing to me origins of the Force. So I'm very fascinated. His is the movie that I cannot picture at all. And I like that. I'm excited about that.
Me too. Yeah. Very, very excited about it. It's interesting that Lucasfilm is sort of going in two directions with directors. It's like very young, new, energized directors. And then some directors in their autumn, that are very wise and have wanted to do this for a long time. I mean, I'm thinking of Tony Gilroy right now. I mean, Tony, he's 65 years young, but I mean, that's a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom. And I mean, I felt every ounce of it in Andor. It was fantastic, right? So I'm hoping we get some that energy, that vibe out of Mangold.
And Mangold's demonstrated he knows how to play with IP. He knows to be there. And they were as much as Indiana Jones really underperformed. Everything from behind the scenes is that Lucasfilm was very, very happy with working with him and what he did. Right. And so I think that was the big thing, So yeah,
he's got a big job there. With
I have
Dawn. Yeah.
He does. That's huge.
Yeah, that is
like they got it. That
to do something like like an Odyssey or a biblical epic or something of that weight and magnitude is just, I don't even know where you begin. Is it an ensemble piece? Is there just one character you highlight? Is there a trinity of characters, much like the High Republic books are doing? Like, how do you push forward with the sort of the beginning of an ideology and what's seemingly the beginning of a religion or a cult, if you will? It's like how does this begin? It's fascinating.
Do you want to hear a dark take on it? Because they talk about it. He talks about it as biblical, and I'm like, give me Cain and Abel.
Yeah,
sure. Give me that story in terms of like the one gets the light side, the other one's super jealous and ends up killing him and that unlocks the dark side.
Yeah,
right.
I think you're right. I think that's actually the story he might use. Honestly, that sounds right.
Yeah,
it sounds like that first fall, the whoever first sort of falls, that might be the drama that he seeks. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be? Because part of me is just like, you would think without any training, people would automatically fall to the dark side. But what if the story is the opposite? Is that like the origin of the Force or the dawn of the Force is that most people who get it are filled with the light and feel good, and it's this one corruption that leads to the opening of the dark side, like that leads to this cracking open of just like Pandora's box almost, of the dark side, or something.
I wonder what the jealousy or the frustration is, though, given that that person may, if they're also Force sensitive, they'll eventually be able to lift the same rock. I really understand what I wonder what the animosity would be. It's kind of that's what's fascinating to me.
Could be lots of things. I mean, we don't know any. That's the thing. He's going to have to create the entire state of this ancient galaxy. I mean, I have to assume there's no formal network between planets. I mean, I would assume there are droids and hyperspace travel, or else this gets real small real quick. but it could, maybe not. It's going to be like really, it could be a really cool thing where actually the tech is super advanced, and they don't use droids for everything yet. I think that comes later.
I do wonder if the Jedi simply form because of a sort of galactic crisis or a war in the stars, if you will. And I know Luthen even alludes to the sort of like the Rakatan invasion in Andor. It's like a throwaway line.
Does he really mention that?
Yeah, he does.
Oh, right. It's like with some of the
I was like,
armor.
Is that one of the deepest lore drops I've heard in a long time? And it's just offhanded from Luthen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's about that Skycriber, and I just do wonder if the Jedi simply form and help the kind of early Republic in whatever is this initial galactic crisis in which you need Guardians, right?
Or and what if you feel this like? What if it's just they feel a pull towards a planet, right? Maybe Ilium or something. Like they just feel a pull, right? And that's where they meet up with each other, realizing they all have this Tython. Tython's a great one. Yeah.
I don't know. One of the widely known as the Jedi starter world.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think they should, our characters should end up there. I don't think we're probably not going to hear the word Jedi in this movie. Right. I think Mangold talked about that, but yeah.
I hope not. Please don't. But a part of me is just like, it's like, what if we call ourselves Jedi?
Well, one of the guys' name will be Jed, and then it'll be like, Jed. I'm Jed too. Jedi?
Yeah.
No.
Jedi?
I think Tython also looks like Southern California in in Mandalorian.
It really
conveniently.
Does. Yeah.
They have.
Yeah, they drove an hour outside.
Easily replicate that.
Yeah.
Right on, man. All right, cool.
I have a couple other random quick ones.
Please.
I think one is just that I was a little surprised. So generally with Disney Plus, when a show premieres or a show ends, more officially, like a big new premiere ends, they kind of announce the next thing that's up. And I really was expecting to get a Skeleton Crew announcement, which we have not got. I was very kind of surprised by that because the last big thing was Echo. And the weird thing is the day Echo dropped, where they dropped all of it. So this does kind of mess with the announcement thing. That was the day, by the way, they dropped all of the Star Wars news, which felt real weird to me. Yeah. To be like, by the way, here's a new show. Oh, forget that. Here's Star Wars. Like, it felt really like weird that happened on the same day from the same company.
They want to start the New Year's on the new year on the right foot. You know, get the discourse started.
Yeah, I'm excited, but it surprised me. I still have yet to get. Like, we don't have any announcements of like of the big two, Marvel or
well,
Star
new people
Wars,
are going to start talking about Dune Part 2 and talk about other giant the Aliens I think series coming up like
coming out.
We have a lot of big sci-fi IP.
The Alien movie,
the Alien movies
coming.
Sorry,
I mean this
Romulus,
I don't want to get too in the weeds.
Romulus, is that what it's called?
Romulus, I think you're right. Yeah, this is going to be the year that stress tests the box office because it's all sequels this year. It's all sequels. It's all IP, which after last year, everyone's just like, we'll see what's going to happen.
So
the other news that I was going to say, which is a little more less insidery and more interesting, is that the sources who have been reporting on these last couple of things that seem to be pretty accurate before they happen also said that they are working on a what if version in the Star Wars universe. Because What If has been pretty successful.
Great. Yeah, they used to do those Star Wars Tales books.
Yeah, Star Wars,
obviously.
Infinities,
Tales, yep. And you just so cool to see, different directions on where the narrative could go. Yeah. Especially when you look at the original trilogy and all the fun possibilities there.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I mean, if they introduce them Mortis characters or reintroduce them, maybe it's their like they could make it like sort of
their version of the Watcher.
Exactly, like maybe the father's just sort of like ruminating on possibilities and things. I mean obviously I'd watch it. That there's
or just the world between worlds, right? You could have someone looking into different.
We used to do a regular sort of segment on Core World News where we would actually prefer some of these what if scenarios. And it's like, it's funny because I think, like one was just like, what if Padme lived? And then like the like extrapolation from there is like insane.
It went real dark real quick.
Count Dooku didn't fall to the dark side. Like, there's yeah, there's all these really interesting. What if Qui-Gon lived? It goes really fun. It's a really fun thought experiment in Star Wars, and they could do some really interesting things.
I'd love to see it. Really love to see it. It's been the What If shows have been for me wonderful. It was my favorite comic growing up as a kid. Was the What Ifs in Marvel. So
the
I'm all about
new season 2 and the Tony Stark getting stranded on Sakaar is just a great episode.
Oh, it's so good.
So
good. I forgot. Yeah, it's really good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of comics, maybe we'll cover some more Star Wars comics next week. Perhaps.
Sure. Yeah. Do we want to finish up the Dark Droids? Do you want to skip that and do the?
I thought we were going to catch up on the other 4 runs there. Star Wars.
Yeah, the 4 runs that do the Dark Droids
and Vader. Yeah.
Yeah, and do their Dark Droid tie-in. Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, cool.
Knock it off. Knock it out. Whatever, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Then that is what we will cover next week. Looking forward to it. Of course, there's will probably be some more news, of course, because that stuff happens. But either way, we're grateful to be talking to you and looking forward to hanging out with you at the Cantina next week on
Cantina Chronicles.